guy, and I love this one, he said to me recently, if you're going to do something, do it. Like, you go all in. If you're going to give it something, you commit to it, and you give it everything. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But he said, don't be, and he called it a slashy. So don't be a, like a someone that also does this. Don't be an artist that also, works 9 to 5. Like, and that was his thing. He's like, I'm either going to be a banker or I'm going to be an artist. So he went to the art route. But, and that's the thing I struggle with too. Like, I'm a real estate agent and I'm a podcaster, but they kind of funnel into the same thing.
Hey guys, thanks for checking back in on Brewed with Hustle. We appreciate you guys listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you guys catch your favorite podcasts. And we'd really like you guys to find us on YouTube. Just search for Brewed with Hustle on YouTube and make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of these episodes. And please hit that like button. That way we really get a good push and more people catch some more of this great content. We're excited about our guest today. And first I want to talk to old Casey. I haven't seen him in a week back there. He's in the background. How's it going, Casey?
Doing good, man. How you been doing?
Doing good, man. Just staying busy brewing and trying to get this new building started. So,
spending time on I-35?
Yeah, spending time on that traffic on I-35. That's it. That's the only thing I'm going to miss about the COVID stuff was during the lockdown.
Oh, yeah.
There was no traffic on I-35.
Yep.
It was just smooth sailing. So what else you been up to?
Man, this week I've been delving in hard on T-shirt designs for my podcast. I got somebody hit me up and said, man, you have T-shirts? And I'm like, no, but I will real soon. So I've been doing a bunch of T-shirt design and editing as usual. That's what I do.
I hear you. So last time we had Mr. Todd Vincent on. What'd you think about old Todd?
Man, that guy, which I didn't know this, went to church Sunday and went to go get me a cup of coffee. Guess what kind of coffee it was? EOT coffee.
Yep. He's probably got the church market locked down on coffee.
I bet he does. And I never noticed it before.
Yeah.
That's great coffee. So I've had his coffee and didn't even know it.
Yeah. So something that a lot of our listeners may not know, but you've had to deal with a little loss in your family recently. I think I want to ask everybody to say some prayers for you and your wife. So hopefully everything's working out there.
That.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get to it. We've got a pretty cool guest today, Mr. Mike Hearne. Mike has a podcast or two of his own. This is Oklahoma. You can see the logo back here behind us where he interviews a lot of really interesting business owners or just people with a great story from Oklahoma. He's also a realtor. He's from the Wells, which is I guess our first Brit to have on the
Let's go
on the show. So he moved here from Wells in 2011 to play golf and study marketing at Southern Nazarene University. He graduated in May of 2015. Went on to real estate. He created This is Oklahoma in July of 2017 and launched the podcast in May of 2018. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. And he's shared over 180 stories on his podcast and continues to spread the love about Oklahoma. Mike, how you doing, man?
Doing well, mate. Thanks for having me on. This is, like I said, shared over 180 stories. It's I don't get to sit on the other side of the table very often, so it's appreciate it, man.
Well, man, we appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we get to share some of those stories with some of my listeners. Man, let's just start with what the move over here from Wells. I mean, so I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I've heard you kind of tell some stories about how you got here and how golf brought you over here. Why don't you just kind of tell us a story of like how golf got you to Oklahoma?
Yeah. So, I mean, like most kids, like you grow up playing pretty much every sport, right?
Yeah.
But I took to golf naturally. I was just, naturally fairly decent at it, and then never wanted to go to university back home. I think I always wanted to play golf and continue to play golf competitively, and never wanted to go to university because if you play golf at university back home, it's, everyone knows the weather of the UK. It rains all the time, and golf season is in the winter, which so it wasn't the same, and I know that it's a 3-year university back home, not a 4-year. So, I had friends and people I played golf against competitively go to the States, and so I knew there was an option. So I applied. I graduated from high school in 2009. I applied that summer and accepted to go to a college up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Accepted, ready to go. Was pumped and nervous at the same time. A place called Nova Southeastern. It was D2 school. And 2 months before I'm about to leave, my dad lost his job.
Oh.
So, hard times. The money we had saved is going to paying bills. And so for the following 2 years after that, I lived the dream. I worked behind the bar at the golf course, worked from 11 to 5 every day, played golf every morning and golf after 5 o'clock. I mean, it was the easiest time of my life. I was 20, 19, 20, actually got paid fairly well, made awesome connections at the golf course and played golf really. I played some of the best golf of my life because I was pretty much full-time golf. But it came a time, obviously, that, after 2 years, I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. I need to reapply. And I reapplied quite late in the year. I had one offer, and that was Southern Nazarene. So I remember the call from my coach. It was like, we'd love to have you, from this Oklahoma guy who I didn't know where an Oklahoma accent was. Didn't even know where Oklahoma was.
He had a strong accent.
Oh, and he took forever to speak as well. I'm just like, is the connection bad? Is he pausing between, and I got used to it. No hurry at all. But I accepted, and me and my dad flew out, 4 or 5 days before school started. Didn't come on a visit. Didn't know where a Nazarene was. Didn't know where Oklahoma was. I think we did a few fundraisers through a couple of golf tournaments back home and fundraised for me to come out. The membership were awesome. They wanted to throw a fundraiser, and so they did that. And in the fundraiser bio, I had written a bio and I'd spelled Oklahoma OAK, like
Oak. Like Oakland.
Like, you're such an idiot, I had no idea. But so we flew out just before school started, and August 2011, I think, was like record for over 100 degrees, so many days. And I remember landing at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, flying into Oklahoma after leaving mountainous Wales and, castles and all the rest of it, all that fairy tale stuff. And I landed and I'm just looking out the window, just like, what is this place, And then driving from the airport up Meridian to Southern Nazarene in Bethany, it's not the most glamorous drive in the world.
That's right.
Devon Tower is halfway built at this point. Oklahoma City was nowhere near what it is today. And I'm just like, what am I doing here? And it was, it's 110 degrees. I'm in jeans and a hoodie and melting. My, dad gets me moved in, and I remember driving back to the airport, the rental car, just like that feeling of like, I've got to say goodbye to my dad, like in like 30 minutes. It took forever to drive down.
How old
there.
were you again?
I was 20, about to be 21. So I was quite old as a freshman, right? I turned 21. My birthday's in September. So I was, about a month later, I turned 21. I was just like, got to the airport, said goodbye to my dad. I was like, oh, I'll see you later. No, I'll see you in 4 months. I walked out of the airport and bawled my eyes out. I'm like, this lady's walking past me. She's like, are you okay? Like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, just sobbing to myself, waiting for my ride to come get me. That's kind of how I came to the States. And then what happened, I also found out that I was ineligible my first year. So I'd flown halfway around the world. Yeah.
And you didn't know this before you came here? I didn't
know. No, coach didn't tell me.
Wow.
Or he was waiting for the go-ahead or not, which it wasn't. Something to do with me being out of school for 2 years had messed with some. And they were NAIA at the time. Now they're Division II, which happened, during my college years. But I hated my first couple of months. I was miserable. Missed home. I had a girlfriend back home at the time.
Probably wanted to go back.
Didn't work out. Yeah, I mean, that long-term relationships very rarely work. So, that we both went in different directions, and just like, I missed home so much. And you can only, like, there was no FaceTime. There was Skype, right? And 6-hour difference. I would always talk to my family or somebody from back home pretty much every day. And then, like after 6 o'clock, it's midnight back home, so everyone's in bed. So that was tough. But my team was very international. We had a guy from my assistant coach was from South Africa. We had a guy from England, Scotland, Sweden, and Colombia on the team. And they'd settled. They knew. And if you know SNU, like you'll get kicked out of school if you get caught drinking or partying or whatever it is. So when I turned 21 in September, my assistant coach at the time came up to me and was like, we're going out tonight, but if you tell anyone, I will destroy you. Like this giant South African rugby player. So I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what to think of it. And we obviously went out and just had a good time. Like it felt like back home. Go out with a good bunch of teammates and hang out. And that's, I think, when my teammates realized that I wasn't like this crying kid who just Skyped his mum every day and missed home. So my friendships got a lot stronger after that, and I just learned to love it. And then the big difference for me happened. I went home that Christmas and realized that I had missed anything. Nothing had changed. All my friends are still doing the same thing. They're still working the same jobs. They still go out on the weekend. They're in exactly the same spot in every bar on every Saturday. And I was just like, I have an opportunity here. And it just hit me that I should probably take full advantage of this, because a lot of international students that come over, they go through those first 4 months, they go home, but they don't come back to their second semester because they get comfortable and they don't want that, But I guess I came back out and learned to love it. And, I mean, now I host a podcast about the state, which is wild.
So the realty side of it, what was that when you started going to school there? Is that you knew you wanted to do that, or did that kind of come later on?
It came later. I at the time, my freshman year, I always knew that I was always say, after 4 years, I'll probably go home and play professional golf. And that slowly, like the second year, I was like, I might think about staying. And then my third year, I played really well in my third year, but instead of going back home, I thought, I think I'll stay. As I got older, I knew that I wasn't fully committed to trying to be a professional golfer. And I knew that I wanted to stay in the States. And as an international student, you get a 1-year work visa, as long as it's in your degree field. Well, I did a marketing degree, so I mean, I could have picked any job really. So I told one of my professors at the time, said, I want to stay for at least a year. I have this opportunity. I've applied to get a 1-year work visa. And, I just said, what do you think I should do? Like, what do you think I'm good at? You know me pretty well, and I don't really want to work a solid 9 to 5. If I'm only going to be here 1 year, I want to treat it as kind of like a gap year, but also obviously make some money as well. And he suggested real estate because a good friend of his, him and this guy both played golf for SNU like 7-8 years ago. So he said, I got a teammate of mine. He's in real estate. He's an awesome guy. You should meet him, and he can tell you all you need to know. And real estate here is completely different to back home. Back home, it's like salary based and just
the way they pay.
Yeah, and it just takes a really long time to buy and sell a house. There's so much legal work and just hoops to jump through. So I meet this guy. It's like, my senior year. I'm probably graduating in about 2 or 3 months, and we hit it off great. He's a golfer, so we talk naturally about golf, and he says, "Look, I don't think Keller Williams isn't going to say no to you coming to work for them. But, what happens after 1 year, right? Like, if they're going to invest in you and teach you and, coach you to be a real estate agent, what happens after that 1 year?" So me being sarcastic, I said, well, look, my odds of getting, like, applying for a visa and getting a work visa in the States is to be a real estate agent is, not a chance in the world, right? So I said, I'm either going to go back to school and be a grad assistant, which I really didn't want to do, because I like playing golf, but you got to be a different type of animal to coach kids as well, especially old teammates of mine. I just didn't want to do it. And then I said sarcastically, I'll just get married, and just I'm very sarcastic as most British humor is. And he's like, well, my sister-in-law, she's single. I was like, okay. He's like, do you want to go on a double date next week? Just like, yeah, sure. Why not? What's the worst could happen? I was like, can I see a picture of her first though? Like, I don't want to be like catfished or whatever. So, and he's like, I said, what's her name? So like, creeped her out on Facebook or whatever, like looked at her on Facebook. I was like, and the first photo that came up in her friend group was like, one of her with a group of friends, and she's like hanging out with a group of friends, and there's a few drinks on the table. And straight away I'm thinking that's a good start, because if I'm from the UK, I like to hang out. I don't drink a lot, but I like to socialize and hang out, you know, and that was one thing that previous times that I'd met girls out here or women out here, they were very against that. I'm like, it's just not who I am. Like I grew, I'm 20 plus years old. I've had all of this growing up, 10 plus years of hanging out with friends and going to the pub and watching football or rugby all day. Right. So yeah, we kind of went on a date and just hit it off. Like she was awesome. She didn't go to SNU. She went to OU, and we went bowling, and I suck at bowling. I'm so bad at bowling. But managed to somehow, I was decent enough to make us put a smile on her face, and quite funny enough that she had a good time. And we went on like a couple more dates, and like we stayed together. And then after I graduated, I went home for 6 weeks because I went to go play golf for Wales in Sweden. So like we've had like 2 awesome months together. I graduated. I had a graduation party. A friend of mine threw a graduation party for me, and my parents were in town. And the first time, like, she met my mum and dad, and my, all my kind of like American family, like, thrown in the deep end. And my dad said to me at the party, he's like, "You need to marry that girl. Like, she's awesome." Yeah. I'm just like, well, like, women back home are very short for the most part. My wife's like 5'10" in heels. She's 6 feet, like, just tall. My dad's like 5'8", just like, "You need to marry this woman. She's awesome." Yeah. Like, oh, thanks, Dad. Like, like, what do you think? He's like, "I need to marry her." So, I went home for 6 weeks, played golf in Europe, and had a great time with, playing for Wales, representing my country, and did that. And when I came back, that's what I knew, because you go away for that period of time after hanging out and being, having a good time for 2 months. Like, when I came back and we literally picked things up like nothing had happened, like, that's when I knew that this was something that, like, we are probably meant for each other. Like, this is, because that's quite a big period of time to be away, and we stayed in touch the whole time, but still, like, 6 weeks is a long time. So like, we ended up like that November, a mate of mine said to me, who was from England and doing exactly the same thing as I was at the time, he's like, "How are you going to stay in the States?" I'm like, "I'm getting married, dude. Like, I'm marrying this girl. Like, she's awesome." And then the following January, I sat with her parents and asked her parents, which was like the hardest thing in the world. Like, my father-in-law's 250, 6'5", Indian dude. Like, he's a teddy bear now, but like at the time, he's like, he can be a very intimidated person, right? Which is funny for people who know him, because he's like just a complete teddy bear now. But I asked them, and then a friend of mine who I met through golf was an attorney, and he said to me, he's like, "You should probably like speak to an immigration attorney about are you going to stay or not?" So I set a meeting with this lady named Kelly, and for some reason Taryn was with me, and we went, and I said, "Look, like, my visa ends in May. Like, Taryn doesn't know. She has no idea what she probably has an idea, but she doesn't know that I've asked her parents." And she's like, Kelly looked at us and she's like, it takes 90 days to file all the documents. You got to get married by like next week, and everything's got to be sent off by March the 1st. And this was the first week in February. And I'm like, I've got to go back to her parents and ask her parents, like, "Can I marry your daughter, like, now?" That was harder. But we spoke to my parents, and they were cool with it, and we did like a tiny small ceremony, and then like, literally, you put your entire relationship in a binder and just send it to the government and just hope that they think it's legit, because I guess this happens all the time. And 90 days later, we got like the all clear that I got an extended visa, basically, until I was approved. They gave me like a filled the gap kind of visa or whatever, until like they process you and they call you in. And my interview was my birthday in September the same year. And I hadn't seen my attorney the whole time. She's not needed, and she's like, I'll be at the the interview. And she walks in, it's a federal building kind of off by the airport. And I'm in a suit, like, she's in her pantsuit. My wife's like dressed pretty nice, and she's like, there's 6 people who could interview you. Out of the 6, 3 of them are just like the worst humans ever. They just don't like internationals. Great. And sat there, and it feels like forever. I'm sweating, my palms are sweaty. I'm like, this is like, I'm like either gonna get sent home, or and this like just larger than life, bubbly personality woman just stuck her head around the corner. It's like, "Mr. Hearne, y'all ready?" And I was just like, Kelly, my attorney, looks at me. She's like, you're good, you're in.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And the questions they ask you, well, first of all, they asked my wife a question she was not expecting.
Yeah.
She was like, when did you get married? And looked at my wife, and she was like, what? Like, she's just like chewing on her tongue. She didn't know what to say. I was like, really? Like, it comes down to this?
Yeah.
But they ask you so many mad questions. Like, you know, have you ever had sex for money? Have you ever had? And I laughed. I did exactly that. I laughed, and she was like, "No, these
Casey,
are like,
it's a good
this
thing
is
you're not
serious."
an immigrant.
You know? And I was just like, "What kind of question is that?" And they were like, "Have you ever had weapons training? You know, like military training?" Which, like, the day before, I was down in Chickasha shooting long range with a buddy of mine, shooting at like 1,000 yards. Like, nope, never done that. Yeah. And he just asked you all these like random yes or no questions. Yeah. Ever committed genocide? I mean. And at the end of it, I was like, why do you ask me those? And she's like, the only reason we ask that is because we legally have to prove that we've asked you those questions. Yeah. Because if we, you know, if you say, no, I never got asked that, and you have, then you can like get away with stuff. Yeah. Like, that's so much, you know, such nonsense. Yeah. But yeah, like, that's how I got married and stayed. And then the following year, we had like a proper wedding, and my family were in town, Taryn's family were in town, and had like the full, she got her day. But yeah, like, I mean, if you've seen a proposal movie, it was like that. Yeah. Like, it should be its own movie.
So her parents are like getting asked by this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Can I marry your daughter like right now? Yeah. And basically she's going to marry a golfer.
Yeah. Yeah. Which my brother-in-law was a golfer, so he was happy, right? He was happy to, you know, that guy who gave me a job and a wife in the same interview. Yeah. Like, I don't know many people who've done, had a good interview like that before, right? Yeah. But yeah, it was mad. Yeah. Like, even we talk about it, you know, it comes up in conversation very often with when we're around friends that we probably never met, and like, or you know, there's someone there who doesn't know our story. Yeah. And we're just like, what? Yeah. Like,
so you kind of fell in love with Oklahoma right off the bat?
Yeah, pretty. And I look back, like when I realized, like, I'm gonna stay here, I love it here, and I started calling this place home, which really pissed my mum off. Yeah. You know, I've like in a few podcasts or something, I would, you know, like, I'm going back home, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, my mum would be like, no, home is in Wales. Like, this is where home is. I'm like, well, it is, but home is for me. I have a house now. Like, that's in Oklahoma. But yeah, it's I kind of the first when I look back on it, there was when I first came to the States, me and my dad went to Ann's Chicken Fry on Route 66 to go to dinner one night. And I think it was there was a game on, because there was a lot of people in like OSU colors, I think. Basketball, might have been basketball, football game. And the lady sat in the booth opposite us, could hear me and my dad talk. And obviously our accent's quite thick at the time. And she's like, I got to interrupt. Like, where are you guys from? Why are you here? You know, and we told her the story. I basically said that my dad's leaving like Monday. You know, I'm just here, and she just leaned across. She's like, if you ever need anything, here's my number. I was like, that's kind of weird. You know, like no one would do that back home. Like that's creeper stuff back home. And now it's just what people do here. That's normal. You know, and there's so many things like that through my years in college that now I look back on, I'm like, it makes total sense. I find myself doing that for others now. But yeah, I just learned to love this place, and just like, I mean, you know, people complain about how flat it is, or how windy it is, or how hot it is. I mean, go live in Wales. Like, I know it's awesome. I know there's castles and mountains. It rains like 70% of the year. Windy. It's miserable. You know, like, it gets dark. I remember going to school in the fall, and it would be dark when I got on the bus to go to school, and it's dark when I get home at 4:30. I'm like, you know, what do you do? I play video games and watch TV all day. Like, you can't do anything.
It's interesting. Like, so many people that I talk to from other states when I'm traveling, if they've ever been to Oklahoma, the first thing they say is they talk about how nice people are from Oklahoma. I think sometimes for us, those of us who've lived here our whole life, we kind of forget about that, or don't notice it as much. Like, we were talking earlier about my drive down I-35. I didn't notice a lot of nice people in rush hour traffic on the way down here. But yeah, that's something we get a lot, is that it just seems like people think people from Oklahoma are super nice. You know, and like that story, that is something you probably wouldn't get in a lot of other states, you know. So okay, so let's get into the podcast. So I have listened to probably 15 or more of your episodes.
Thank you. Yeah.
And like so I'm a serial podcast listener, right? Mm-hmm. And so typically I'll scan through and like look for something like leadership or whatever I'm into, right? And then on yours, I catch myself like not even scanning or skipping any, because it's just like, you know, it's not typically the type of thing I would listen to, because it's not like super business related. Right. Some of them are. Yeah. But some of the ones that I thought, man, I would never like just read that title and listen to that because it's not what I'm into. Like I'll listen to it and it's like, holy crap. Like I didn't know, like the one that's one of the most amazing ones was the girl a few episodes back that you interviewed who has a YouTube channel cleaning her house.
Yeah, it's mad.
It's crazy. So my fiance is just like a neat freak. And so I was listening to your podcast, and while we're sitting in our office at home together, she works from home. And while I'm listening to it, I pull it up on YouTube and I stopped. I was like, hey, you got to check this girl out, you know? Yeah. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love her. And she like now she watches her stuff. Yeah. Like these are things that these are people that have stories that without your podcast, a lot of people may not ever know about, you know, some of these stories. What is like some of the most unique stories that you've had on your podcast?
I mean, Ashley's one who you just mentioned, like her YouTube channel is called Till Vacuum Do Us Part. And it's the same with Instagram too. And you're right. Like she's just a mum. She's like a 9-10-year-old daughter, and her husband has 2 degrees from OSU, but her husband now manages her business that's full-time YouTube. Yeah. She's posted 400 videos in 2 years, and she literally just cleans her house. And she has all these affiliate links.
I couldn't believe how many people are watching those episodes.
Yeah. And in the podcast, she's like, you know, there's no males that have a cleaning YouTube channel. Yeah. Like, well, really? No way. Like, she's like, you should start one. No, absolutely
that
not.
That would mean I'd have to clean.
Yeah, exactly. And like, my wife doesn't even want to clean our house. I don't want to do it either. So, but yeah, like that's a mad story, you're right? And then this one, I get this question quite a bit. So the one that comes to mind, there's a guy. He has a business called OKC Sign Service, and the gas station signs, all the big kind of signs. He's been doing that for 30 years. Yeah. You know, they fall down. You know, the back in the day there were neon signs. You know, and I was driving to do that podcast. He was referred to me by another guest that I had, which is how I get 90% of the people I have on the podcast. And he, you know, driving down there, it was kind of like summer day. It was late in the afternoon. I was tired. I'm like, every part of my body just wanted to send him a message and say, look, I can't make it. Make an excuse and just go home. But I went down there in this warehouse close to I-240, and you know, I walk in and it's just sign stuff everywhere. I'm like, cool. Like, what's this guy do? And we're going to his office, and his office is just like full. Like the desk is like handmade, and you know, like older than I am, and all this other cool stuff, and this horse stuff and ranch stuff, farm stuff, all in his office. I'm like, it's kind of cool. I didn't expect that. And he's like typical older, like Oklahoma guy. He's in his Wranglers, and he's got killer boots, but you know, a work shirt. And we start talking. I'm like, so, you know, what do you do? Like, what's this sign business? And he tells me some sign stories, you know, about working for 7-Eleven, all this kind of stuff. And we get like 10 minutes in, and he's told me everything there is to know about signs. I'm like, so, like, I can't just post a podcast on 10 minutes, right? Yeah. Like, what are you passionate about? What else do you do? Well, I like horses. I grew up on a farm. You know, got into all that kind of stuff, and just, you know, always have like naturally really good with horses. I just have a sixth sense for it, a skill for it, you know, to teach and be with them. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So, you know, what do you do that? Like, what do you do on the weekends? Is that a lot of your time? It's like, yeah, well, I have a barn, and you know, what I do is I train horses, you know, who have just been like wild horses, but also what I do is I do horse therapy for kids who have disabilities. I'm like, well, I don't know what horse therapy is. Like, tell me about it. And he basically says, look, insurance doesn't cover horse therapy for disabled kids. I mean, you know, he has a friend of his that has a puppy that, you know, they go into hospitals and the kids hang out, but you can't take a horse into you know, the children's hospital, right? So he's like, I have the kids come out, And these are just kids that have severe autism, or they just struggle to open up and converse and just live a normal life, right? Have a conversation with people.
Yeah.
And so he brings these kids out to his barn, puts them on a horse, and then just by using the interaction with the horse and the child, gets them to open up and converse. And he's showing me videos of these little kids just cackling, loving life, riding horses, and I'm like, well, that's really cool. So we get talking, and he tells me a story about there's this little girl who she's on 24-hour care. There's 3 nurses for her that care for her 8-hour shifts every day.
Wow.
And they just can't get her to converse, engage. She just sits there, right? She's really tough to kind of crack. And she sat there her hands are clasped, and they bring her out to the ranch. Say, hey, let's see if this can work. We tried everything else. Let's see if this can work. And she's just sat in her chair with with her hands clasped, not really looking down. And he walks over with the horse, and she opens her hands and reaches to the horse. And I have goosebumps thinking about it. And he said the nurses just, all of them just broke down, crying their eyes out. And he didn't think anything of it at the time. He's got the horse with the kid, hung out, put the kid on the horse, had rode around, and then after the family left, he turns to the nurses. He's like, what just happened? Why? And they were like, we've been trying for months to get her to open her hands up, and you come along with a horse, and it happens in 5 seconds.
Wow.
So he doesn't he doesn't make a lot of money from it. He doesn't charge a lot because it's not covered by the kid's insurance. Yeah. It's just if you're in that scene and you know about it, you know who he is. If you're not in that scene, you have no idea who he is. Doesn't have a website, doesn't tell people about it. Yeah. Just loves horses and loves kids. That's awesome. Yeah. So that's one that that was quite early on as well. I think the podcast is OKC Sign Service as well. He doesn't even say anything about horses. The title, but that was one. Another one, I guess, would be Blue 7, the store, the kind of clothing and apparel store, Blue 7. They sell a lot of Thunder stuff and just clothing, stuff like that. The guy who I interviewed, who's the owner now, Caleb, he started, he walked in there one day and tried to worked leather goods at the time. He walked in there one day and said, I'd love to sell my leather work at your store. Can I do that? And then, so they had him on consignment doing some things. And then one day they said, we're looking for someone part-time. Would you like to work here? So he did that, and then he works his way up, works more hours, becomes a manager. And then he said one day the owners, who are a couple, just walked in and were like, we don't want to do this anymore. If you want it, we will own or finance you the business, and it's yours. Yeah. And he's like, what?
I remember this episode.
And that, where else does that happen, right? And he said the when he realized it was his moment was a jean. An apparel company called up and were like, hey, we need a credit card for a jean order. And he hands the phone to the previous owner. He's like, what are you doing? Give me a credit card. You own the business now. And he's been doing it for 10 plus years or whatever. That's mad, isn't it? From walking in there nervous as a kid, trying to sell your stuff there, and then now you own the business. So that was another really cool one, and they do really well, and they're probably more well known in the city, in the metro area than Carl. Carl Martin is the guy's name who does the horse stuff.
That's one of the things I've learned is people who that have asked me about they want to start a business. I think a lot of people think there's this particular path you're supposed to take, this one path. Here's how you do it. You do this first, you do this next. And one of the things I've really picked up from not only just knowing a lot of entrepreneurs that own different businesses, but also a lot of the people because I will say when I first started listening to your podcast, I did scroll through and look for the entrepreneurial type stuff, And one of the things that I get from your podcast is that last story, how many people became an entrepreneur through a very different path. There's not this certain way that you become an entrepreneur. It really starts with being in the right place at the right time, or having a passion for something, or just having a desire to want to be your own boss or start a business, that kind of thing. Yeah. What would you say? So all of these people that you've, because to me, being a realtor, that's entrepreneurship. I've been in sales, any kind of sales. If you don't treat it like it's your own business, then you're probably doing it wrong. So what have you learned from the people that you've interviewed about that entrepreneurial spirit, that way of just trying to fight through and make things happen.
Yeah, I think I struggle with like the whole entrepreneur thing. Yeah. If I'm honest, like I struggle to see myself. I mean, like I said, in definition of the word, I am an entrepreneur, right? Like I don't have a 9 to 5. My only income is from real estate and some income now thanks to my sponsors from the podcast. But early on in my real estate career, I actually did really well because of all the friends that I had in college. They just bought new houses and I was the go-to, which was awesome, which also meant that I didn't work hard for those deals at all. I say work hard, I didn't like in the sales term, meaning I didn't knock on doors, I didn't make sales calls. I guess built friendships over 4 years of being in college, which is kind of how I do my business. I tried the whole sales call thing, not really good at it, not great at the whole rejection thing either. And try making a sales call when you're a Brit too, right? Some people they're like, oh, it'd be easy. You have an accent. Like, oh, it's also quite the opposite because they think you're calling from out of state, which, definitely sounds like I am. So I think, my second and third years, I struggled quite a bit. And I got a part-time job, which was at the golf course for me, which was awesome. So I got to play free golf. But, from a business entrepreneur perspective, like getting a part-time job is like throwing in the towel. And at the time, my wife worked in real estate for a short time too. And doing it together that's interesting. She didn't like it. She's more of a, thankfully she's like, I'd want a solid paycheck. So I'm going to leave for the best of both of us. I'm like, okay, you do that. Thank you so much. And thank you to this day, because she's still doing a 9 to 5. But I think how I built my business in real estate is just through, I realized like, what am I good at? I'm good at making friends. I'm good at hanging out. So I just focus on that. Is it measurable? No, it's not measurable. I mean, can I have a spreadsheet of how many new friends I made today? Yeah, but I don't know many people who have that. I mean, I have like a general rule of, hey, make sure you reach out to certain people every day and just keep a log of it. But it's not like a strict, Excel sheet. I think I probably should do that, knowing all the people I've met. I'm just still kind of flying. I think most entrepreneurs do this, right? They just kind of you just go into it and you just figure it out. And I'm still, even though I've been doing real estate for 5 years, still, I guess, quote, figuring it out as technology evolves and as selling becomes more social media based rather than, I never answer my phone to somebody I don't know who it is. If it's important, they leave a message. I hate when people knock on my door because my dogs go nuts. And I'm like, if they, if people react that way, if I react that way to someone coming, making a phone call, I don't want to be that person. And that's probably not the best way to go about it. Like, I have some great friends in real estate. They make phone calls every day. They kill it. They're awesome. But then, I would not enjoy doing that. So I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore entrepreneur. I kind of just I just kind of figure it out, I guess, as it goes along. But that's, one of the reasons I started the podcast too, and started the whole This Is Oklahoma initially, was to create a database, build relationships that we could find a common love for something and just talk and hang out. And the goal was to have, an email list and a podcast that would, I would put real estate ads on. Thankfully, early on, I realized that it just wasn't, I just didn't feel right. It was actually, you mentioned Todd, your previous guest. It was actually when I interviewed Todd, we sat down and we had a really cool conversation. Even before we started recording, we talked for an hour, recorded for an hour and a half, and then talked again over coffee. And I just felt like it would kind of ruin it if I started the podcast with, this is Mike Hearne, the real estate agent, call me if you want to buy a house. And, oh, by the way, listen to this amazing, meaningful story from this guy who's just built an insane coffee business. But again, call me because I want to sell your house. And from that day, luckily, I never put any ads on there. I talk about it every now and then, but it's not like an actual advertisement. And out of nowhere, my business has just done better anyway, because I've made more relationships and met more people. And I think that's been the key, is knocking it out, meeting more people, doing more podcasts. And it's helped tremendously with just having meaningful conversations outside of the podcast. It's great when the microphones go on and you're on camera, you're on microphone and it's recording and you're trying to get through this interview, and especially being on the interview side, you're always listening to the next, what can I write? You're writing notes, and I do the same thing too. It's like, what can I, the worst thing for us is like having to pause, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm always doing the same thing, but I've noticed how it's just helped me have conversations with people, and it's made me at ease to sell as well. Because at first, when I was in real estate, I hated, trying to have a conversation with someone, because I knew I didn't have enough confidence in myself to sell what I was selling myself, basically. And also, they can see right through you. Yeah. You've been in sales, you know this. If you walk in and you're not confident, you're not going to stay, you're done, right? You're just wasting your time. So like, it's much easier to go for the ask, or go for that right hook, I guess, in a Gary V, put it in a Gary V term, after you've actually built a relationship with somebody. So that's tremendously been helped me. Keep jabbing, make friends. And there's sometimes where like you don't ask soon enough and they go buy a house, or they have a parent that goes buys a house without you, and you're just like kicking yourself. But over time, it seems to have been paying. I've been doing the podcast now for 2 years, and it's slowly paying off. I'm starting to sell houses over social media, which is mad. I tell some 60-year-old agent that I just sold a $390,000 house over a DM on Instagram. They're like, what's the DM? What's Instagram? And that's when I know I'm onto something, because like 5 or 6 years down the road, this social media game is going to be where everybody is. And I've already put in 10 years of building, towards that. So that's kind of that's where I see my like long game going to, is to kind of down that road.
Yeah. I don't know if you know who Zig Ziglar is.
Have you ever listened? Name? Yeah.
Okay. So he had a saying that the key to success is building winning relationships, and I've always believed that. But in my first sales gig was in the car business.
Oh, you went deep.
Yeah. Well, so my first job was in radio.
Okay.
And I realized real quick I wasn't gonna make money.
Yeah.
And so to make extra money, long story short, they wouldn't give me a raise, so they said go sell some advertisement, and they gave me the leads that never buy, and I went and sold like 3 of the 12 that week, and so I learned I was good at sales.
Yeah.
And moved back to Oklahoma City and got in the car business. Well, what I learned in the car business was if a friend was to send somebody, because they asked that person, hey, I'm looking for a car, and then they said, oh, you got to go see my guy Jake. He sells cars. Like, that was an easy sell.
Sure.
Right? And so I learned real quick, everybody likes to have a guy, right? So how many times have you been in a conversation with somebody and they're like, oh, man, my tooth, I got to find a dentist. Oh, you got to go see my dentist, right? Because everybody's guy is the best.
Right.
Everybody's realtor, that's the best guy, right? And so I learned real quick, if I could be the guy to a lot of people, so now I'm the beer guy, right? But if I could be the guy, then those were easy sells. So I think like when you first got here, you kind of told me a little bit about how your method of selling is through just building relationships.
Yeah.
And even though you're saying you don't see yourself as this hardcore entrepreneur, I think like key number 1, entrepreneurship 101. Like if I'm not in any position to teach a class on entrepreneurship, but if I was, lesson number 1 would be build winning relationships. And I think you've cracked into something right there. And what you're doing with your podcast, to me, is like gold. It's like, because you're not doing it for the purpose of selling houses. You're doing it for the purpose of telling stories and building these relationships. And if that's your goal and purpose, somebody can't help but call you to buy a house.
Yeah, you're right. And it's tough too, right? Because like, you see all other real estate agents or people who are also in the same industry as you. It might have been cars or whatever it is you're selling. Like they're killing it because they're asking for it all the time.
Yeah.
And I've had friends that just colleagues that like they do really well, and I'm like, yeah, I hope this pays off one day, because there's gonna be I'm not gonna be annoyed. I don't struggle, but still,
I think the way you're doing it though is more sustainable. And what I noticed when I first got in the car business and I was doing the beating the pavement, you know, I was every person that drove into the lot, I was running out there because that's what they told you to do. That's how they told you had to do it. You had to run out there, and that awkward feeling when somebody does not want to talk to you, they don't want to roll their window down. What I found out real quick was that was a quick way to be burnt out, to get burnt out on sales. And the relationship part of it makes it fun also, building those relationships.
Yeah, because like when when I meet people now, I walk up and I'm like, how's your wife doing? How are the kids? You know, how was your vacation? Like you have this common ground, right?
Yep.
You don't have, and inevitably, like they always ask everyone asks, the next question is, oh, how are you? How's business? Right? And it just naturally, they've brought the topic up, right? So it's an easier sell that way, I guess, rather than you coming in and being like, hey, so you want to move yet?
Yeah.
Like, dude, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, you know, I played sports when I was a kid, and in baseball, a coach will always say that baseball is 90% mental. And now that I play a lot of golf, I think golf is 99% mental, right?
That's true.
What are some lessons and key takeaways you take that the game of golf has taught you that's helped you with not only the realtor side of what you do, but just life in general? Yeah,
I think golf, you know, especially if you start from such a young age. I started playing golf when I joined my first golf club when I was 8, for my 8th birthday. And, you know, you grow up, especially if you're fairly good at it, the older guys, they want to play golf with you. And you grow up really quick. You know, you learn how to be respectful to the older generation. It either might be my dad's friends, or my granddad and his friends. You know, like I said, you just learn how to, you know, to converse and be around older and respect the older generation, and also kind of have conversations with them too. You know, there's not many 8, 9, 10-year-olds now that, you know, if their granddad's friends walked in, they wouldn't have a conversation, or, you know, or a good conversation. So golf taught me to grow up really quick, and then also, because I kind of took to it quite naturally, I tried to, you know, I was fairly good at it from a young age, but the key to me being good at it from a young age was I played with a lot of kids who were better than me. And that's one of the things that I've always tried to do, regardless of what the business or the industry or sport it is. If you find someone that's doing it better than you are, you need to go play golf with them and learn from them, because they will help you, and ultimately you will get as good as them, or maybe better, and you just continue to find someone that's, you know, that's better than you. So that's one thing I focused on early on, and I always kind of made friends with the older guys and would always kind of play and kind of like force them to take me under their wing, kind of thing, because I was like the ringer as a kid too, you know, from that, I guess, that perspective. And then, you know, growing up, like I said, golf is super mental when you get into the competitive side, and especially back home, we play a lot of match play golf back home. So it's, you know, you are playing against your opponent. And so from the age of like 14, 15, I've played match play golf for my county, you know, my golf club. And then later on as an adult, I played for my country, and it's for the most part straight match play. So,
okay. What do you mean you played for your country?
I represented my country.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was, I started playing, I played for Wales, 2019. No, that's, what am I talking? 2000. Yeah, probably like 2011 to 16. I played for my country. 2012 to 16, something like that. Yeah, so we played, and that's the men. I never played for the under 18s, but that's the men's team. Yeah. So played for them. We have 2 or 3 tournaments every year you could kind of be picked for. Home internationals was every year, whereas Wales, Ireland, England, Scotland played against each other 3 days, Wednesday to Friday. You played 36 holes a day. You played England, Scotland, Ireland over the weekend. And then Friday night you all went out and had a good time. And then you flew home.
A smaller version of like the President's Cup.
Kind of, yeah.
Right?
You're right. Kind of like that. But, you know, we grew up playing a team of 10, you know, 5 foursomes matches in the morning, and then 10 singles.
So, and what did you have to do to qualify for that?
There was a kind of like the Wales Golf Union would have like tournaments all through the year,
season,
and there was like an order of merit kind of thing. Or if you
like
you
a
win.
Point system.
Yeah. Point system. You'd win one, or you'd get kind of if you always stayed on and traveled, they kind of kept record of you. And it was quite late that I got into it. I should have, you know, I think I was like a reserve for the previous year, and then I finally got picked.
That's cool, man.
Golf was like taken me to so many places around the world. I played. Yeah, we went to Ireland to play that year. I played in Japan. In 2014, I played Japan for Wales, a 3-man team. We went to go play in the World Amateur in Japan, and we did not. Like every country in the world basically plays in the World Amateur Team Championships. And the guys who won that was Team USA, and on Team USA who won it was Bryson DeChambeau. He made I remember watching him make a 10-foot putt to win. And I'm like, This
he's
guy's
doing some big stuff now.
He is both on and off the golf course. The guy's huge.
Yeah.
But at the time, I'm just like, these guys are like rock stars, you know? And that's kind of why I knew I'd never wanted to be a professional golfer, because if I'm going to go up against that, there's no way.
So what do you, we'll get a little off subject here. So what's your take on how he's kind of taking some unique ways to his game right now? He's hitting the ball further than like anybody ever, I think, right? And so I know like his clubs are all the same length. I mean, what do you think about the way he's going about it?
The first time I saw him was in Japan at that golf tournament, and he was wearing his Payne Stewart hat, you know, and he had this brick-looking putter, and you know, he was like the real deal. And the individual who won the tournament was John Rahm. So I'm like playing against these guys, and I'm finishing like 70th out of 150 people. I played decent, but I was there, right? I think the whole thing. But yeah, so then I came back to the States, and we actually played the same golf tournament down in Sea Island called the Jones Cup. And I remember there was a group of us from the UK who were there, and Bryson's bag is like outside on the patio, and he's inside, and we know he's inside. So we pull every single club out of his bag, and like he's got like fat tennis style grips on his clubs, and like we're just checking all the lengths, and we grab like a sand wedge and a 3-iron and his driver and a 7-iron. We're like, they are all the same length. Well, okay. And then the following year, I think he won like the NCAAs and turned pro. I'm like, all right. And he kind of, you know, you're always like, this guy, is it going to, you know, it's kind of strange. And then he went the side saddle putting. He's always done something crazy, right? And he puts his golf balls in water to check the displacement, make sure everything. Like, so every box of balls he gets, he takes them all out of the packet and makes sure that puts them lets them float in water. And one or two of them will, they're different, I guess.
Wow, yeah.
So does that. So he's always done something different. And initially, I think, like, he's very outspoken as well. And initially I thought, this guy's just a dick. You know, like, like, just no one, I never really liked him.
Yeah. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And now I'm a huge fan of him now. Because, like, I think Brooks Koepka came out with a quote saying, you know, like, you got to give it to him. He's worked hard in the offseason. Yeah. He's come out, he's put the effort in, and he's bombing it. Yeah. And he's hitting fairways too. Like, there's two different. And it's funny, like this morning I recorded a podcast with a friend of mine who's a long drive champion. He's number 6 ranked in the world long drive. And we talked about it. And like, it's easy to stand there and hit it as hard as you want. You know, the long drive guys, they have 8 balls they've got to hit in the fairway, and the fairway's 60 yards wide. But you get it on the tee box, you got to hit it 365 down a tight fairway and chip and putt. Yeah, Bryson's. Yeah, they've always kind of like the Golf Channel, or not the golf, but PGA Tour has always kind of done something. Every time he's done something kind of like off the hook a little bit. Like one year, I think he came out and he had like a compass on his green book, and he was using that, and they banned the compass. And then he brings the side saddle or whatever, and they ban that. Yeah, they can't ban him hitting it far.
It's kind of like how the Masters, how they changed the course when Tiger was just like destroying it.
It'll be interesting to see him play the majors this year.
But I think like they really need to, the PGA really needs to, well, just golf in general, needs to allow more stuff like that, because I think what's going to happen is you're going to see an effect that we kind of saw for a little bit, but there's going to be a post-Tiger effect, I think, when it comes to, like when the NBA, when Jordan retired, you know, there was just a loss of interest, and they're going to have to, the PGA's going to have to change, you know, the way they market things a little bit. Right now it's easy for him. Tiger does it all.
Right. Especially when he wins the Masters, right? Or wins his first tournament back and then wins the Masters.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think like they're going to have to find ways to take advantage of some of those quirkiness, the little things, odd things, allow some of that stuff to, you know, bring interest back into it. You know?
Yeah, and it's and people are, you know, they say, what do you do to kind of compete with what he's hitting it? Like, how do you scale the golf ball back? Well, no, I don't think you do that. I think you just grow the rough. Like that's the simple answer. You grow the rough closer to the green. You can't make the golf courses any longer. You know, they're landlocked for the most part. And the thing is, some of the best golf courses, they don't get played because they're not long enough. Yeah. So the courses that are on the PGA Tour are only used because they are on a resort. They have a huge hotel. Like they can take the corporate thing. Like they're not usually the best golf courses. Obviously, there's a few exceptions, but I think, it's easy to fix. Just grow the rough. Yeah. And if he hits it 20 yards short of every green and he's in knee-high rough, then that's his problem, you know? It's easy to fix. But I love watching it. I love to see people like cry about it too, right? Like, you know, if he's using different clubs, then fair enough. There's there's ways you can bring. I think the tour regulation on driver shaft size is like 48 inches. Well, bring it down a couple of inches. Like that'll make a difference.
So I've got to think that that mindset that golf taught you when you were a kid probably helped with that awkward time when you first came here and you kind of wanted to go back, right? I mean, it's probably different for somebody that grew up playing golf and having that golfer's mindset than for somebody else. Yeah,
definitely helped me just make friends. And I always had golf. I could always go play golf, right? And I always knew that I could go to a Hefner and make friends with someone playing golf. I never, probably never met them before, but I could talk golf. And it's also like, if you're good at it, it's people come to you and ask you things, or you're on the range hitting golf shots and you're hitting it and making a different sound when you hit it than the average guy that goes out to Lake Hefner, which just probably goes out once a month sometimes and just likes to hit golf balls, and they ask questions. And the group that I had at SNU too, with me and a friend of mine was from England and a guy from Colombia, those are kind of like my kind of good friends, and like people would hear us talk and they'd know that we weren't from here, so they'd ask. And it's you're right, like golf definitely helped, and golf has opened every single door to me that I've I wouldn't be, everything that I've done I can always take it back to golf. Everything. I really try to push my son to play golf, and he's really into it, but he's into so many sports. It's been hard for me to kind of get him to really focus on golf, so it'll be like a seasonal thing. When he's into it, he's real into it. He wants to go out there and play every day. But it's fine with me that he's into it at all because of the lessons, man. Like to me, golf really does teach you a lot, A lot of, when I managed casinos, I would use a golf analogy a lot, which was like, I would always tell people that worked under me to don't be afraid to make mistakes, but make them quick, make them soon, and then learn from it. Because it always cracks me up. Guys, like you're talking about, the guy that plays golf once a month or whatever, they'll get up on the tee box and they'll hit a drive and miss the fairway and end up over in the trees, right? And then they get in there in the trees and they see this little window that they could get through that's going to get them closer to the green. Their choice is, do I hit it through this little window or do I chip out onto the fairway and then go? And they're like, I'm going to hit through this window. And I'm sitting there going, you were just on a tee box where the window was huge. Like you had this entire fairway to hit and you couldn't hit that one, but now you're going to hit it out of this rough and right through this little window, right? It's like, learn from your mistake. Don't make past mistakes over again, I mean, those are little things. It's simple. That golf, like nothing else teaches you that kind of stuff, Okay, back on the podcast. I asked you unique guests you had, famous guests. Famous guests. So the good thing is with the podcast, like I don't have a set, like it's not a set genre, right? It's just basically if you're from Oklahoma or you live here or you've ever been here, like you can be on the podcast. So, and that's a good thing. And back to what you said earlier, like someone can come to the podcast and scroll down and like see someone. If it's business, they go to business. If it's sports, they can go to sports. If it's, they can do those things, which is the whole goal too. Like I don't want to have one like core group. I mean, I do have a core group of listeners. It's mostly my mom and dad from back home, but it's nice to have like a huge range of listeners as well, even if they only listen to 1 or 2 a month. So on the athlete side, one for me that like I was nervous at recording was I interviewed with Matt Hoffman, the BMX guy. So he's BMX Hall of Fame. He's in the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, and they helped set this one up. And it's like I played this guy's video games growing up. Like Matt Hoffman, like that's video games. He has like PlayStation video games and all that stuff. Like he was like the BMX guy. Him and Tony Hawk were like the same guys, right? So that one, like I started the podcast and I was like messed up the intro. I'm like, I got to start this again. Like I was so nervous. That one was a big one. That was for me personally, was a really big one. And then I had a lady on a social media, I say famous, would be this lady named Brooke Wells. She's like top 5 in the nation. No, she's number 2 in the nation at CrossFit, and she's top 5 in the world. Female CrossFit. I mean, has over 1 million followers on Instagram. Like, she's a very good-looking girl, but she throws some serious weight around. And like she's won CrossFit Games athlete. She's been to everyone I think since 2015. Like, she was awesome and followed up a lot to get her on the podcast. She went to high school in Tulsa, and she lives in Tulsa and works out at the gym in Tulsa, CrossFit T-Town. And just one day sent her an email. You know, like a lot of people, it's easy to send a DM, but if you've got an email there, send the email, because they'll see those a lot more than, especially if they have 1 million followers. Yeah. So send an email, and I sent like 4 or 5 emails once every 2 months, just kind of follow up. And she replied and was like, yeah, let's do it. How's next week? Done. Wow. At the gym, yeah, perfect. Let's go. So me and a buddy of mine who was completely in love with her drove up to Tulsa. Like, we both interviewed him. He's sat and he's a co-host with me, and it like made his entire year. So he co-hosted with me on that one. So that was kind of famous for that. I think Oklahoma famous. Hal Smith was a great podcast.
That's probably my favorite. Awesome. My favorite so episode of yours.
He was like so easy.
I used to work for Hal Smith back in the day. Yeah.
Like that's one of the easiest interviews I've ever done, because he just,
even having worked for him, there was a lot of stuff he talked about in that podcast that I didn't know about,
like the Elvis thing.
Yeah, well,
which
to
is
me it was
sneaking into an Elvis concert.
Yeah. And then just like I didn't fully know all about his background in some of those restaurant groups. You know, I mean, I knew a little bit of it, but just the what was it? The story that he's sitting in somewhere eating, and somebody confronted him about kind of doing things the way they do it, like stealing their idea. Well,
It's the Steak and Ale, like the CEO
like,
of Steak and Ale.
Come work for us or whatever, like some of that stuff was pretty cool.
And he talks about, he's like, I'm never going to go work. Like, I'm staying in Oklahoma or whatever. And the guy's like, makes him an offer, and he throws out a stupid number. He's like, I want $1 million a year. And I was like, okay. He's like, oh, great. I have to go ask Sandy if we can do this or not. Yeah.
So you mentioned, earlier, you mentioned that when you first came here, you talked about like how Oklahoma City was different, and the Devon Tower was just being built.
Yeah.
Describe how you've seen Oklahoma City particularly transform in these years since you first got here.
Yeah, I remember hitting golf balls at Lake Hefner, just like on the range, looking down at downtown and seeing cranes around the Devon Tower. Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a big deal. What is that? I didn't know what it was. And as a college student, you don't really go far either. You don't go. Well, we went out a few nights, but you never go out downtown. It was usually quite far away from school, so nobody saw you. But as far as like growth, I mean, it's it's just like coffee shops. I mean, there's so many coffee shops now. Ice cream, there's so many places to have good ice cream. There's killer pizza here now, right? Like, and they got the time, it was like Empire, Halls was, Saucy Sicilian was just starting up. Halls Pizza had just had their truck. And there was a few others, but nobody really knew the food scene talked about it. So the food scene was one of the things I can easily
it's changed a lot. It's
wild, isn't it? Places like Waffle Champion, and then the industry that you're in, like there was no breweries here when 2011 there was. It was like you'd go to McNally's and go pint night, and that was it. And now, you have like so much competition, which is great, because the whole rising tide lifts all boats thing. It's great for you guys to be and to bounce off each other, and like being in Oklahoma and being in business in the same industry. It's your competition, but you're not like at each other's throats all the time. Like, you are helping each other out and doing things, and the whole Brewers Union scene and all that kind of thing. So just seeing like food and drink, and it's awesome, isn't it, to be around that and see it. And I feel like I'm a part of that because I've been here almost 10 years. And I love bringing family and friends here to see new restaurants or to see different things. My aunt was in town at the start of, was it the start? Yeah, it was the start of this year. It was like February this year, before the whole COVID thing. We went up to Ishans. And then we went to Expenditure, the brewery up there too. And just like, that to her was like the best. That's like real America, like that's not like a tourist America. That is like real America. And I've had 2 of my mates from high school back home came out to the States, and we go somewhere, and they're like, this is what this place is like. A friend of mine, like he loves the big city. He worked in London, now he's in Canada. Went to New York. He loves the big city thing. So he didn't want to come to Oklahoma first. We were going on a road trip from San Fran to LA, and he's like, why don't we just fly out there first? I don't want to come here. I'm like, I have a house. Come here. We had a few nights out, and he's like, oh, this place is actually really good. Went to Tucker's for burgers and stuff like that. And like, that would be, I think that the food and beverage scene for sure would be like the biggest growth thing I've seen. And then from a real estate perspective, I mean, Yukon was not the size it is. You know, I live in Yukon. It was not the size back then that it is now. Piedmont the same. And then, you know, there was no Wheeler District, right? There was really no, Midtown was, it was okay, but it was not what it is now. There was no Blue Garden.
I don't think there was the Plaza District.
Right, no Plaza District. Paseo was kind of just full of art people and no restaurants. You know, there was no cool restaurants in the Paseo either. So it's awesome to see.
I just hope that that's still here after COVID.
Yeah.
It's been, I mean, even before COVID, we started to see a few restaurants close down, which was just, I think, it wasn't because overcrowded. I think it was just too many starting at once.
Yeah.
And so the ones who weren't really seasoned in it and didn't really know the nuts and bolts of the business, I think had a hard time. And now COVID, man, I'm just seeing so many of my friends and people that I do business with on the beer side, like really struggling. During the lockdown was actually the easier part.
Really?
Because we had, PPP money. We had things to kind of get through that time, but now that money's drying up and people still aren't going out.
Alcohol sales went through the roof, right?
Yeah. Well, for us, alcohol sales were good. Beer package was good.
Yeah.
In like stores and stuff, that was great. That went up, but we lost every draft account.
Yeah.
You know, every restaurant and bar was shut down, and then now they're still struggling, and we're back to, half capacity being allowed in these bars.
Yeah, it's mad. Like I did a podcast yesterday with Brian Bogert from Social Order Dining Collective, Jones Assembly and Fuzzies and stuff like that. Yeah. And he was like, we have half as much capacity, but I have to hire twice as many staff. It's like, it doesn't make any sense at all. And the Jones Assembly is like, can't have artists come in, can't have bands, can't do that. So I would not like to be in that industry right now.
Yeah. Okay. So on This Is Oklahoma, what's the future for This Is Oklahoma? What's the grand vision?
Yeah. I want it to be like a kind of like a network, right? Like a TV network, so a TV channel. So when you sign, you'll go to ESPN, and there won't just be one type of podcast or one type of show. There is a lot, and whatever one you like, that's the one you listen to. So that's the goal with however many guests I have on, like different from all different backgrounds. I have a golf series, and that purely started just from me wanting to get together with my mates once a week, and like I had, with guys who I was on my golf team with that they've had kids and they're busy, and when you have a wife, things get different, all the rest of it. I said, well, let's just meet Monday nights. That's all it is, an hour. And pre-COVID, it was great. Now they're trying to figure out how to get, one of my friend's wives works she's a nurse, so he's like, I am on lockdown. I can't do anything, which is understandable. But that was, so the golf series started from that. I kind of have a car series. Did a food series for a little bit with a co-host who local food guy, which is kind of still going on and on, depending on when we can figure the rest of it out. Just anything, like it's something that I find interesting. Like I want to talk about it. And I think there's, if you scroll through, recently I've had a lot of females on the podcast, and it's just how it's gone. Just kind of every person that I meet, I always ask, who do you know that I should interview next? And that's how I get every guest. And they're always like, you should meet this person, and they introduce you. And that's how it's much easier to get a guest like that than just sending a cold email. So it's kind of going that way. I want to have what you have. I mean, this studio is awesome. I want to have a studio.
Just gotta know people.
I gotta know people. I want to have, I definitely got room at the house to do it. I need to get the lighting done and do that. And also, I would love to make more video content. That's one thing, I love watching YouTube. I don't really watch cable TV that much. I love watching car YouTube channels or, the whole vlog style stuff, because it is basically TV, like there's a lot of real estate agents that do awesome vlogs. Ryan Serhant is a really good one. Property tours, or just, it's not cheap to have someone follow you around with a camera, and I by no means have an interesting life to have someone that follow me around every single day with a camera, but it'd be cool to have someone in the corner that's videoing this from a background kind of perspective, and see the back of the production, and just kind of get the little things that like the pre-recorded, the conversations and stuff. So I would love to do that.
People really like that stuff. Yeah. So that's why, like on the brewery side, we do a weekly vlog. Yeah. Where it's just me taking people along the journey of me starting the business and building a new building that we're moving into, and what goes into brewing. People like that.
That's the goal for me, is to get into all that side of thing and just build that out. the Instagram's strong. It's at 37,000. It kind of takes care of itself. But YouTube is where I'm trying to build. And then Facebook, I haven't really put much time into building the Facebook page up as I like, I mean, I have mid 2,000s on likes with no effort and no money. But I think like once you start making the video content, and I've been trialing stuff. I have a weekly golf video that I post. Once a week I'll go play a local golf course or a different golf course every week. We're on week 4 I think right now, so, and I've recorded it the week before. I have all the videos. I just post it every Sunday about 5-6 o'clock, and then sticking to the same upload time of video. So every golf video will go out on a Sunday, and then figuring out, I would love to do a crib style real estate one without selling real estate hard. It'd be like, oh, come check out this awesome house that's in Jones, or that's in Piedmont, or wherever, or Tulsa, or
So the real estate thing's a long play for you? You're going to stick it out?
Yeah, I love doing it. It's, if I could podcast every day, I would do it every day. If I can find enough sponsors and make enough money from it, I would do it every day.
So do you have a niche when it comes to real estate? Is there a particular, because you interviewed a guy, and I can't remember his name, but he's more into like luxury homes.
Oh, Matt, probably. Was it Matt Holder?
And so I started following him on Instagram, and like, wow, dude, like some of these places.
Oh yeah, so Matt actually has just moved to LA. Matt worked for Wyatt Poindexter, who's a luxury real estate agent. Okay. And his house is like,
that's who's
unbelievable.
I think that's whose Instagram I started
Wyatt's,
following.
It's like luxury homes. That's his thing. But he started doing normal houses and just got into it, and now he is the guy for luxury, right? In one of the guys for luxury in the state. He does awesome videos, spends a ton of money on his listings, and that's the key with if you have $1 million listing, you got to spend $5,000 to $8,000 marketing it. Your average agent, who if they have a friend or like a referral that has $1 million listing, they don't want to spend. They don't want to bank or bet that money. But if you've been doing it forever, that's what it takes. So,
but it's all perspective.
It's
the same game, but just a different
percentage
scale.
game. But for me, real estate, it's something I'll always do. I would love to get into I've been big on watching Ryan Serhant recently. Like he's built his entire business. He used to be a hand model, and now he has this killer business. And he talks about the power of. He started his vlog like a year or 2 years ago, and he did a video recently that by vlogging it changed my entire business, because people now from all around the world are calling me to buy an apartment in New York, or now he's listing houses all over the country, not just in New York. So I know the power of it. That goes back to
what I said earlier about having a guy, being somebody's guy. When people watch you on a vlog format, it's like they get to know you, right? And then you're their guy. Even though they've never met you. Yeah.
So that's like the long-term goal. I think by the end of this year, the crib style video will be up and running. The golf videos will always go, depending if golf is in season. I have a car one as well. I mean, the thing is, when you're in these little scenes, like there's so many cool people in Oklahoma that have such great car collections. And some of these people are unknown. There's a guy, we went down to Purcell about 2 months ago. A guy down in Purcell who has 55,000 followers on Instagram. His Instagram is he's a Mopar guy, loves Mopars. So I just sent him a message, hey, would love to come down and see what what you do, because his whole thing is he goes to scrapyards, buys a junk Mopar thing and rebuilds the whole thing. No idea who he was. Got down there, and like his dad's collection is like ridiculous. Like GT500 Mustang from back in the day, like all this mad stuff. And you just meet this guy. He's like, come back anytime you want. I had a blast doing this video with you guys. Come back anytime you want. And without social media or without sending a message, you wouldn't know. So, and same with like houses and golf, you just connect, don't you? So that's the goal, is to do it that way.
No commercial real estate?
No, I've been like...
Not a Grant Cardone guy?
No. I think he ruffles a lot of feathers, doesn't he? Like it's funny you mentioned that, because I had a lady on the podcast recently who has a wild story, who did Ellen.
Did the hair
and stuff, which is mad.
When I heard you mention that, I was like, man, I thought I was the only guy that paid attention to Grant Cardone.
I mean, I have his 10X book and all that stuff, but I think he's just very polarizing, and he is the ultimate sales, like, your typical car sales guy. But I mean, he wins, so like you can't argue with his results. But I think like with commercial stuff, my broker is big in the commercial game. His family's just owned a lot of property, so naturally that's how he got into it. and I've been shadowing him on some deals, and the commercial game it's longer. I mean, the paychecks are bigger, but you don't close as many. And Oklahoma is saturated with commercial real estate agents who are 50, 60 years old. They know every single landowner. That's a hard nut to crack.
Which the Grant Cardone guys, they like to just buy the real estate and lease it out. Multi-family or
the apartment buildings, all the rest of it. So I got to meet some of those guys.
That
would be nice.
Be
a nice payday.
All right, man. So last question. So you came here from Wells, didn't know anybody. You don't really call yourself an entrepreneur, but man, like everything you've just described about yourself is very entrepreneurial, right? And then really stepping out there and creating something. That's to me what entrepreneurship is, creating, right? And you've created something that's very unique. Nobody else in Oklahoma is really doing what you do with the podcast, right? And especially with what you're wanting to do with the podcast. So the question I'm going to ask you is, it's your last day on earth. Everything you've learned through all of this stuff, somebody comes up to you and says, man, I want to be successful. I want to create something like what you've created. What's the one piece of advice you're going to leave them with before you're gone?
I mean, just start now. Like, just start.
Get started.
You've got to start. And I mean, I've made this mistake, and I continue to make this mistake. We fret and we worry about what other people are going to think. We'll worry about doing it right. I mean, at the moment with the whole cribs thing I was talking about, like, I'm worrying about trying to find a videographer and instead of just doing it on my iPhone myself, because I'm worrying about what other person would say, or strapping a GoPro to my chest and I'm walking through a house. Just start. There was a lot. I think we doubt ourselves a lot. I think there's a lot of just kind of
insecurity.
And I definitely
afraid of judgment.
For sure, I struggle with that a lot. But at the end of the day, like, once you post that video or you post that picture or post that podcast, it's done. No one cares. Nobody cares. Like, that's one thing that a friend of mine says to me every time after I play golf. He says, "What'd you shoot?" I tell him, and he goes, "Good." Nobody cares. Absolutely nobody. Because in the real world, it doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't. No one, the guy walking down the street or the guy you just opened the door for walking into 7-Eleven, he does not care what you just shot. So as long as, and that's one thing I remember that, because you probably just you might have just played golf and you mentioned you shot one of your best rounds. Like, it feels great, doesn't it? But you got to tell your wife that, or you got to tell someone that, and you're just like, you just don't care.
In and out.
So that's another thing too. Is just start, be consistent, be very consistent at it. That's one of the things that Ashley, who has that cleaning YouTube channel, said. She posted, since starting the YouTube channel, she posted minimum 3 days a week, 3 videos a week. She's posted 400 videos in 2 years. Just crushed it. Or I think the math works out, something like that. I mean, just that's what it takes, because I mean, I think we all struggle with instant success, and we want that, that instant
That's what
thing
social
now.
media's done to us. How many likes have we gotten?
Exactly. And I think I hope they're trying to take the likes away. I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be great to see how that changes people's mindsets, the things that they will post, regardless of how many likes they'll get. I think probably 2 things: just start, and then whatever it is, be consistent. And then I say 3 things. A guy, and I love this one, he said to me recently, if you're going to do something, do it. You go all in. If you're going to give it something, you commit to it, and you give it everything. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But he said, don't be, and he called it a slashy. So don't be someone that also does this. Don't be an artist that also, works 9 to 5. And that was his thing. He's like, I'm either going to be a banker or I'm going to be an artist. So he went to the art route. But, that's the thing I struggle with too. Like, I'm a real estate agent and I'm a podcaster, but they kind of funnel into the same thing, which makes sense. But so 3 things.
My grandpa told my dad this. My dad always told me this. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. It's the same thing, right? You just go all in. Like, you've over 180 episodes, right? So I doubt after somebody listens to your next episode is going to be thinking about that first episode. Man, his audio sucked in that first episode.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Nobody's going to be thinking about that, right? Just do it and get better as you go. So, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me down.
Yeah, it's great to have our first Brit on the episode.
That's
Casey,
awesome.
What do you think, man?
Man, that last part.
You like that?
He nailed it. Thank you. And I'm gonna tell a story from what I've experienced just from that. I'm a little self-conscious about things. I really want to do amazing things. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I won't do things because I can't do them to the caliber that I want to do them.
Yeah.
And like he said, best thing you can do is just get started.
Yeah.
I just started a podcast recently. I was telling my buddies that were in on it with me, I was like, don't be upset when we get 10 downloads. All right.
Yeah.
I'm 6 episodes in. We hit over 800 downloads today. And I average about 120, 130 listeners per episode. Yeah. And you know what it took? Just doing it.
Yeah.
Clicking that upload button.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of, you know, throw it out the window. Go ahead and start.
Yep.
You know, go ahead and put your foot in that door, you know, because if you don't do that, you know, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And this life is not forever.
Yeah.
So better do it now.
Yeah. Yep. Got to get started.
That's
a Gary V lesson, right?
Right.
Yeah. I love his other one. He's only got one life.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So absolutely amazing. I loved sitting here listening to all of this, man. This guy has got a great outlook, and I think we're a little jaded here as Oklahomans because we don't notice some of this stuff every day, but he reminded me that we live in a great state.
Yep.
And dude, I've been to Boston and I've been to California. You know, you don't get the kind of people there that you do here.
Yeah.
Don't even make eye contact on the subway. You know, you don't even do that.
Yeah.
You know, you hold the door open for somebody and they're like, what's that for?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? I'm like, because that's just what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. Like you said, get started. Like Zig Ziglar said, nobody has ever gotten to step number 2 if they didn't take step number 1 first. So take that to heart, and whatever you're thinking about doing, whatever it is you want to do, just get started. You'll figure it out along the way. So one thing you need to figure out is how to hit that subscribe button below, hit the like button. If you're more of just an audio podcast person, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. What else we got, Casey? There's Google Podcasts.
I think you're on about every platform there is.
Go find your favorite place to get podcasts. Look for Brewed with Hustle. And we appreciate you guys tuning in. And make sure you check back next week for the next version of Brewed with Hustle. Cheers, guys.